name is Galvin. I'm the head of the art department for Outplay Entertainment in Dundee. I also work as a lead artist at that company as well, which means I do everything from contributing to the artwork to career progression for the artists that work there, to helping directing visuals as well. When thinking about what I should kind of cover today and give you some insight about, I thought I would kind of go through what it's like to actually come into the industry when, as it says up here, you're not necessarily the best artist in the world. And as I kind of find, maybe 18, 19 years later, that, fairly introspectively, I'm still not the best artist in the world. But I've learned how to improve my skills across the board. I've learned how to embrace production art, and in order to be able to produce a career for myself that has been very, very enjoyable. And I want to be able to talk about it today.
Thank you. So, as I said, my name is
Galvin.
I'm married to Nikki, 2 kids, Freya and Patrick.
I'm from Dublin, Ireland originally.
I studied traditional
animation and 3D modelling and 3D animation. And I've worked in various different roles in games, art and digital media
over the years. As I said, I'm
currently head of
art at Outplay Entertainment in Dundee.
Real interest in art and all things artwork when I was a kid.
Drawing, always drawing,
scribbling, doodling, handing it to folk to look after and give me praise.
If I ever
got that.
Loads
of modelling clay, modelling stuff, always kind of playing around with stuff. And I always kind of hoped that I would end up doing something in that line of work, but wasn't sure whether, with games, definitely not. That was not something that I kind of felt that I could kind of get into at the time, or how you would actually get into that at all. This was just around the time when the SNES was becoming, a fairly, very well-known Nintendo product. I kind of figured I would get into doing comics art. I was big into Marvel, DC comics and stuff at the time, the age of about 10 or 11. I was at secondary school, did art. It was not great in terms of in secondary school. It was just taught as fine art, and my interest in artwork was there, but the school didn't really have it wasn't set up to kind of focus you in working in any other fields to do with art. It was engineering and football. That was about it. Your 2 outputs from my school, both of which fantastic outputs as well, but neither of which I was particularly adept at. Parents weren't sure what they should do with regards to that, but were always very supportive, and still are, in terms of me going on to do the career that I wanted to do. My dad was great at drawing, and I always kind of looked at what he did. He worked as a plumber, but as a result, he kind of wasn't really sure what he could kind of help me with. But he did point me in the direction of various different animation studios that Ireland and Dublin in particular had various different animation studios at the time, and I had the opportunity to look over the shoulders of animators, make them cups of tea periodically, and find out how you actually, using an interest in art, having an ability to draw, kind of going in and making a career out of production art. The animation industry is production orientated to the last. In order to get these series out, there's a process for art right the way through the system. The games industry, when working well, works in the same way. When I was at uni, Ballyfermot Senior College in Dublin, very, very well known for traditional animation. And I did a year of portfolio prep because I finished school very young. I was 16 when I'd done all my exams and was finished. I started school early and finished school early. So I did a year of portfolio preparation, and that was just basically a year of kind of growing up. 2 years of animation studies after that, and that was all introduction to actually how to draw, fundamentals, how to actually draw properly, and how to understand form and shape, and actually be able to put down my ideas down on paper in that case. And I realised after that there probably wouldn't be all the kind of job prospects that I would have liked after that, and also I needed to improve. So I went and changed over to do 3D modelling and 3D animation,
as there appeared as a growing industry to be more output as regards to that. And at the time, at least, I was right. But as I point down here at the bottom, when I went to uni first time and I saw the talent pool that were in and around the folk that I was working with, I nearly left after the first 2 weeks because it was unbelievable. The guys were incredibly talented, and I was kind of definitely of the kind of bottom, lower tier of that group. And it was kind of changing my perception of things, changing how I was going to work, or how I was going to get something from it, in order to kind of get the best from it. I needed to work extra hard, to be perfectly honest, and working late, quite a lot of the time, working into the morning, quite a lot of the time, and it took me a couple of years to start readily kind of progressing through that group, to where I was starting to produce artwork that I was kind of happy with, but also artwork that was indicative of what would eventually become my take on production art. I started to form my own visual style at the time, so to which I carry through to today, none of which I implement in my career. That's a very separate thing. The illustration and animation and interests that I have outside of work do not represent themselves inside of work. I do a very different thing inside of work. So, to kind of give you an overview of my career to date, as I said from the get-go, I've worked in quite a few different positions over the years. I've had a lot of great opportunity working with very, very talented people. I've not always had lead artists to kind of guide me, depending on the size of the studio. I have or haven't had that opportunity, and I probably would be a stronger artist if I always had that lead artist representation, help me to tell me actually what's not working. And a lot of the time, you know, having that person there that has kind of gone through the process, understands what works for that company or for that process, and can kind of point you in the right way. But I have had that. I have had that opportunity as well. So, first company I worked for was a straight out university. I went straight to work for Vivendi, Universal, Sierra, Havas. They have about 10 names altogether. And these are just a big conglomerate of company that do everything from localization to original IP, PC games, a massive, massive company. And the guys of them today, I've no idea, but they've done a lot. The very first thing I worked on was the Cosmopolitan wedding planner. It was terrible. It was absolute shocker, kind of going into working in the industry I wanted to work in, and the first thing I was working on was the Cosmopolitan wedding planner. Straight into an animal encyclopedia, and then into animation for a children's education game, which was much more close to home for me. And that was a matter of bearing with the other work and kind of getting my opportunity when it came along. They recognised that I had an interest in production art. I had an interest in finding out the best ways to actually build the visuals that were right for those products. The pros for me about that were, you know, I got Photoshop, in this case was the main piece of kit that they were using at the time. Real proficiency, you know, as I say here, I became an expert in copying and pasting graphics, but I actually had real software proficiency by the time I'd finished working at this company, which was only a relatively short period of time. I was working as a contractor, so I came in, they showed me the ropes. There was a few folk that were there that once I showed that I had interest in particular areas, were happy to show me how to do more things. But actually when I turned up, I was a contractor, and they'd no interest in me whatsoever. As long as I did the thing I needed to do, get it done and get out. It's a short-term contract, but it was very interesting nonetheless. And it started me on the road to get a better understanding of the kind of thing I might like to do. Second job that I had, I got a job as a 3D modeler and animator for a company that made training modules for the pharmaceutical industry in Dublin. Very, very dry work, great staff that I was working with, really talented folk, great 3D modelers, great 3D animators, and they were fantastic at actually showing me how to build a production for the art pipeline. And my lesson from here at the top is meet the brief.
this is something that I've carried through to my career and to this point today. The producers and lead artists that I had at this company, despite it not being a heavily creative role that I was working in, the people in this job really gave me an understanding about how to dig into the very specific details of what was needed for those products and make very accurate work based on that. It doesn't sound all that exciting, but when you're 20 years of age and you're working as a 3D modeler, 3D animator, and you're doing essentially what it is you were looking to do, it was great to get paid at the end of the day to do it. It was a cool thing at the time, and I always appreciated it. So, massive learning curve. It was a company that was just expanding. You were dumped in the deep end, and they wanted to know how you would improve things, and they wanted to know about me, which was great. I was probably pretty cocky at the time and was quite happy about kind of piping up and saying we could do this or we could do that. But they were very interested in getting me involved with the process, and I owe a debt of gratitude to this company to this day. Ultimately, the content was too dry for me. I'd studied animation at uni. I liked watching Thundercats. I liked doing animation at home and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to be, I wanted to do something that had a better creative output. So I decided at that point in time that I was going to move to Edinburgh. I'd been to Edinburgh for a long weekend with a group of mates for a fairly boozy weekend. It was a lot of fun, and decided to move over there. Worked as a graphic designer, game artist. I worked in a clothes shop. I did a lot of things when I was working in Edinburgh to make ends meet. It was hard going. I was still really early in my career. Folk weren't really interested in kind of giving out work at that time. There were some PC games. I was doing a bit of 3D modeling here, a bit of graphic design there, a bit of character design, and it just wasn't really kind of working. So, I didn't know folk. I turned up in a city where I didn't really kind of know folk. So after about 18 months of working there, I got a job at Tsunami down in Cambridge. These guys were fantastic. Working with a boss who owned the company, a guy called Martin Hollis, who just a very humble guy, gave me a good kind of break there. I had access to everything. It was brilliant. Animation, illustration, 3D animation, 3D modeling, everything. And it was a real eye-opener as regards to how amazing the games industry could be. I was getting, well paid, getting a good, learning an awful lot. Learned a lot about Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop and other art packages. Was able to travel to Los Angeles, the E3 Games Convention, which was another massive thing at the time for me, as it kind of gave me some context for the gaming world beyond what I kind of knew at that point in time. Just such a great few years, and learned a hell of a lot from the people that I was working there. I worked with a Cameroonian artist named Vita Simdumbe, who blew me out of the water in terms of the work that he was doing. Just a raw talent, and he lifted my work. Now, he technically reported to me eventually, but he was the one that was pushing me. And it was just from speaking to him and to seeing what he was doing and how he handled things, really kind of pushed my artwork along, made me a better artist by working with him. And he was just a very sweet guy as well, which was really fantastic. So I don't really have anything bad to say about those four and a half years that I worked in Cambridge at this company. We did puzzle games. We ended up being a think tank for Nintendo, producing Wii downloadable titles and speaking with Nintendo about how to make games and playing around with concepts and playing around with the Wii controller before it became the Wii controller, and it was a very fine thing. It was a very nice thing. I'm very, very lucky to be involved with it. So, next job was quite a change. I'd moved to Dundee, and I started working on a lot of kind of branded products.
I was always interested in working on getting my hands on everything to do with, so I always liked working for small companies. And I worked for a company called Dankey. And Dankey already had established himself as a workhouse of sorts, where they were able to very, very quickly produce very accurate products for the platforms that they were developing for DirecTV and for Sky Games. And they did very well with this. Again, really, really talented and focused people. And that really kind of helped me to kind of get a better idea about how the artwork that was kind of the artist that was developing in me, how to train that into keeping the brief and keeping it really, really simple when I was working. Always remembering who our demographic was, always remembering who it was we were making our games for. And as a result, in the 2.5 years I worked there, it's just a small sample of some of the products that I kind of worked on in that time. Everything from XBLA games to Wii development games, various different TV shows, SpongeBob, The Muppets, various different things over the years. And this was great because, you know, I liked working with brands. I liked being able to, you know, try out different things and work in different ways. And these guys were they were just fantastic for kind of introducing that to me, and a very just a very nice bunch of people as well. And so after this, I moved to Dynamo Games. This is my first opportunity to deal with mentoring and development of other members of staff. When I joined Dynamo, I came in as a contract artist initially for a couple of weeks, and then took over with their art department, or what was to become their art department. This was a company that had been running for a number of years with a couple of products. Championship Manager Football was one of the products that they worked on, and Facebook games were something that were coming through at the time. I had loads of creative freedom here, but also had the first opportunity to do real hiring around what the company could A, afford, and B, look to facilitate in terms of the type of staff that they wanted going forward. And it kind of brought out my growing interest in working with developing other people's careers based on my own experiences. So a really, really great group. Really enjoyed working with them, and I enjoyed being able to you know, help with art direction, in hiring, in meeting clients, in this case Channel 4 in particular, and working out what the best way was to build these products from the very ground up. It was a great experience, and a very, very different one to what I'd kind of had previous to that. So you know, the only downside was that the development was limited just to what we could actually do as a company. And as a result, I was looking for something different. But the thing I was looking for was actually department development. I was very interested in being able to kind of get involved with developing the style and visual of products from the ground up. And that brought me to where I currently work, which is at Outplay Entertainment. And as my kind of big lesson that I'd kind of learned from here was the most rewarding things don't come from where you think. And this was, you know, when I eventually got to the point where I realized that the development of individuals, development of talent, and development of the department was something I was very interested in doing. Outplay was able to deliver that in bucket loads. We developed initially for Facebook, and then had mobile partnered products, and now develop exclusively for mobile. It's just some of the products that I've worked on over the years, and we've grown from being 6 or 7 people 9 years ago to about 120 people where we are now at the moment. The opportunity to animate, character design, illustrate, direct, career direct, meet people, go out to events like this, and everything else in between has been afforded from kind of working at Outplay, which has been great. My own staff, who are very senior group of artists across the board, that range from illustrators to graphic designers and 2D and 3D animators and character modelers. A really, really diverse range of artists which represent very like a wide range of the various different art jobs that are available in the games industry. So I learn a lot from them. I'm learning from them all the time, and you know, probably the only thing that doesn't happen as much is actually have as much time with those artists as I would like. So, but it's been a great opportunity, and as I said, it's currently where I reside. So just in general, so the kind of career lessons for me over my career to date has been don't ask, don't get. So when you're working with other artists or you're working with other individuals in your job, speak to them about what it is that you're looking for from your career, and where do you want to develop your skills. Meet the brief. This is number 2 on my list, but it's actually right away from the very beginning. So meet the brief first, and everything else that you want to do to make it nice afterwards, you do afterwards. But if you're working with a client, meet what they're looking for first of all, and then plus it afterwards. And sometimes things fall over. Living in Edinburgh was that for me. It just didn't work out. It was loads of bit part work, and not very satisfying, not representative of the city these days at all, but somewhat representative of what it was for me all those years ago, despite me heading back to Edinburgh later on today. Cambridge, introduction of real ale, and always keep learning. That was the big thing for me there. Listen to your colleagues and not just your direct manager or boss. I learned more from the people that were around me and people that I worked with. Keep it simple. When you're developing games, try and just keep it simple. What are you trying to do? You know, what is it that you're trying to tell the player? What do you want the player to do? And from an art perspective, keep your visuals tidy and then embellish them afterwards if you want to, but keep it clear, keep the playability simple. Embrace new experiences. In my case, it was mentoring and development were the big thing. I couldn't have forecast that was something that was going to happen, but certainly very interesting. And the most rewarding things don't always come from where you think. I mean, again, the departmental development and individual career progression and career development is a big part of my day-to-day training. Sometimes agony, and sometimes just speaking to people about the opportunities that are across in the company that I work for, which is a lot, and that's, you know, makes up kind of my day to day. So the other part of this I kind of wanted to talk about today was in terms of, as an artist coming into the games industry, it can be a little bit kind of scary when you're kind of looking at, when you're interviewing or when you're applying for companies and you're going, what are they looking for? How do I actually why would they hire a student or somebody, a recent graduate? How do I work my portfolio to be something that's actually kind of stand out and is going to be eye-catching? I mean, a lot of that's going to come down to the talent therein, of course. But I thought I'd put together getting an art job in games, just some good rules of thumb. The games industry, depending on the companies, can come across as quite elitist, and you know, in most cases it's not because it's representative of people are taking any offence in your application or anything else in between. It's just they're businesses and they're looking for the right people for those roles. Sometimes their hiring processes are somewhat convoluted. Sometimes their hiring processes are just not as transparent as they need to be. But I've gone through some points that might help in terms of being able to put together an idea for you for when you're actually applying as an artist, and how to set up your portfolio. And this is across the board, whether you're a 3D modeler, animator, general artist, or anything else in between. So have a portfolio that represents your interests as well as your specific capabilities. You'll come across more engaged when you're speaking about the opportunity. It's so many times when I'm looking at portfolios, folk have their content that's in there that they don't care about. They don't care that they have had a module in university that's to do with character design, or to do with UI, or to do whatever. But they stick it in there because they spent some time on it and they got a grade for it, or whatever it might be. You know, it's always should be the case that the work that's in there is something that you want to talk about, and therefore the people that eventually call you into the interview, you're going to be talking to them about. Any company worth its salt is hiring you, not just your skill.
They're wanting somebody who's going to be able to come in, get involved with their products, and they're hiring an individual.
Don't apply for jobs that you know you will hate,
because you just might get them. I've seen that many times before in the past, and possibly maybe even done it once or twice myself, where I've applied for jobs that I know they're not for me, and I can technically do the job, and I might get that role, but I know I'm going to be miserable in it. It's try as much as you can, and it's difficult from the beginning, but try and apply for positions that you can be enthused about. You might need to travel for that. You might need to travel beyond the city that you grew up in, or you might need to travel to somewhere you've never been to before. But when you're applying for things, apply for positions that actually genuinely interest you, and try and engage with people as regards to that. The third point is kind of almost like the first point to an extent. Don't put work in your portfolio you don't like, because you'll end up explaining it away. You don't want to make excuses for anything in your portfolio. If you have 10 good pieces in your portfolio, fine, that's fine. Make 10 good pieces that you can talk about, that you can wax about, and that you're proud about. You're mostly going to have an online portfolio. In my day, you carried around a big case and you opened up pictures and you slid it in front of somebody and you went, that represents me. That was a difficult thing, because everything from getting your printing right to spending money on printing, but keeping your online portfolio really clean, really accessible. Lead artists, art directors, hiring managers generally only have a few minutes, and I tend to find that when we have new roles out, we'll get swathes of applicants, and there's literally seconds between looking through portfolios. We know what level we're hiring at, so our expectation is that somebody can do A, B, C, and D at this various different levels. But the time is very short, so try and keep your work really clear, well titled, and ready for somebody to see. Try and make the work as current as possible. Often old work doesn't show off newly acquired skills and interests. If you're getting better, don't put in old stuff that that doesn't show off your skills. Because you're kind of go, oh, that's just my old stuff. When you're in for an interview, the person is wanting to hear the context. They're wanting to hear. If you're coming out straight from university, you have no experience. If you're coming from a background that even if you've not gone to university, you have no experience. So you're going on your portfolio. So you're going to want to keep that stuff as current and as relevant as possible. So try and edit your portfolio to the jobs you're applying for. So if you're applying as an animator, but you're a general artist and you do a bit of everything and you do good animation, put all the animation up front. Let the person see that. Don't let them have to dig for it when they come into it, because they'll just move along. They will just move along. So remember that you are an extension of your portfolio during the interview process. So you should be prepared to talk about it. Try and know your stuff. If it's the case that you're interested in 3D modeling, talk about your experience of 3D modeling within your portfolio. Speak to them about how they employ things in their projects and how they actually work themselves. But be prepared to speak to them about it, and be happy to speak about the work in your portfolio. And when you're doing group project work, highlight what you specifically did in your team projects. We often get show reels of animation and 3D modeling and all manner of stuff, and trying to actually pinpoint what that individual did. Sometimes we find that it's very difficult to find actually what they did, or maybe it's the case that the very specialized thing that they did doesn't show off in the same way as other things. It's not a slight on their work, but if you're working as a character rigger and doing 3D animation, your work is not going to be as identifiable as the person who did the visual effects or the character design or whatever it might be. It doesn't make your work any less valid, but just be prepared to speak about that very specific thing. It doesn't take away from the good work that you did in your team project. There's a lot of team projects, a lot of team-orientated work when you're at university, when you're doing various different courses, and because you're going to be working in a team environment, it gives you a good opportunity to be able to speak about the good work that you've done. So, contact the companies that you're interested in getting involved with. Get in contact with them, send them an email, ring them. If you really want to get involved in the industry and you want to get into it, get in contact with them and see if there's somebody that you can speak to, you know. In a lot of cases, the reasons why they won't get back to you, as I kind of say here, they're just generally just time. They're busy. They probably get, X amount of requests, but it doesn't mean that you can't get in contact with them. You should do. And we get requests all the time. Can I come and have a look around the studio? Or how do you do this? What software are you using? Is it worth going in? I like painting textures. Is that a viable career for me in the games industry? All these various different, very valid questions, and they're very valid because an individual has that interest or has that question. But get in contact with them and ask them these things because they're only human, and most times, if the question comes in front of an artist, an animator, a human resources in some cases as well, they'll be happy to pass the information along. I don't know how long you're going to be waiting to get an answer, but in a lot of cases they'll be happy to answer. And I'm speaking from experience as an asker and an askee. I've been on both ends of that, and of recent times, we get requests for internships, requests for work experience, requests for all manner of different things, we try to facilitate where we can. We are Dundee, where I work, is a city with 3 unis, and we get illustrators, producers, animators, computer science, students and graduates coming out all the time. It's also a city that has a funny little kind of games industry in and around it as well. That's it's part of its identity now. So you get a lot of people in and around that are looking for experience, and we want to be able to help how we can. Ask them what they're looking for in a new hire. So if they're looking for a junior artist, they're very specific about that junior part of it. They're not expecting you to come in and turn their company over and be able to come in and kick the door open and turn their brand new project on its head or whatever. They're expecting you to be able to come in and hit some pre-existing visuals, some pre-existing pipeline, and that's no bad thing. That's how you learn how to employ game graphics and game art. It gives you a genuine process-based output for your art interest within the games industry. And it's, ask them how they work with junior artists and how they work with artists in general. So, in terms of hiring, it's depending on the size of the company. Although this maybe not fair to say it, this is their business, and they're adding to their staff is a big decision. The company I work for, we're a series of small companies almost under a Outplay the umbrella. There's 12, 13 people on each project. So if we add one person to that project, whether it be a junior artist to a senior artist, that's a significant change to that team. Recruitment is no small thing if you're applying for big studios as well. Remember that you'll be part of a smaller team within that structure, and the importance of being understanding that is that they're putting importance on the hiring process. So whether you feel that you're going to be a cog in a bigger machine, or you feel or hope that there's going to be career progression for you within that company, it is the case that you need to be aware of that. So think about what you want to get from your first move, or even your next move. If it's the case that you're working in the industry already, where do you want your career to go? What do you want to kind of get from it? So is my phone gone? No, it's okay. It's okay. No, that's mine. I think that's mine. Yeah, I think so. No, you're okay. But in the end, the big thing I'd say after X amount of years working in the industry is keep learning all the time. It's always the case that there's always something new. Refine your skills. Work out how to do something better. If you want to move into other areas, the games industry has so many different areas for artists, graphic designers, illustrators, riggers, animators, technical artists, 3D animators. The list, it's a long, long list, and that's just even just in my own experience. There's a very broad range of art-orientated roles that you can get involved with, that you can get into. And there's various different ways to get into them. You know, you can get everything from internships to straight from university. It's a very interesting and varied career that I've managed to have so far. Looking forward to what it kind of brings next. You know, the company I work for at the moment is looking at developing on new platforms. We're looking for leveraging game design work that we've established over the last few years into new products. We're looking at better ways to be more efficient. How do we train people better? There's so much there, and it's certainly been a career that's kind of delivered a lot for me, and I think it could do for you too. So thank you for listening to me for the last 40 odd minutes, 35 minutes. As I said to begin with, I was an artist that needed to learn a lot, and I think I have over the last 18, 19 years. I still have a lot to learn, and continue to do that. Thank you very much. Yeah. If I could work anywhere in the world, that's a good question. Probably New York. It was somewhere that it knocked my socks off when the few times that I've been there. The kind of the vibrancy of it, and also the boroughs, how everything kind of felt like it was its own little thing. I can imagine you can quite easily kind of work in one section and not leave that section, you know. So, yeah, it's kind of. I remember years ago, kind of thinking, oh, who could I work with over there? So, well, probably New York, but that kind of is on the basis of my own personal greediness to an extent, you know, just love of pizza and having a good time. So, yeah, definitely. So. Hey.
As someone who can relate to not being like a world of greatest artist, what is the main fundamentals that you focus on to get better?
Drawing.
Just continue practicing.
It's I kind of, I mean, to this day, like, I mean, one of my interests outside of work is illustration. You know, I like doing illustration for kind of kids books, that kind of thing. And part of that kind of comes from having young kids, you know, and looking at how stories are illustrated and how ideas are illustrated. And I think when something doesn't work for me, a piece of artwork, in work or outside of work, it's generally because something fundamental is broken. I haven't got a shape right, or the silhouette is not strong enough in a bit of character design. The colors don't sit well together. There's not enough contrast between things. And usually when you kind of peel back a little bit, it kind of comes down to, you know what, just fundamentally, I haven't kind of cracked what works. If you're looking at UI design, for example, contrast between buttons, pop-up backgrounds, text, all that kind of stuff. When you kind of pare it back and make it quite clear that this is the contrast between the spacing and layout of things, and then started going into the colors and the theme even, you know, you kind of tend to crack that nut then. When it comes to shape and form, take it back to drawing circles and cylinders and boxes and stuff. And it hurts as an artist to have to do that. It really hurts, because you kind of go, right, I've got, not lazy, but too familiar. You get too familiar with doing stuff in a particular way, and you know, it's when you kind of go back a little bit, it kind of really helps. But look at, when you're looking at your own, the character work you enjoy, or UI work, or visual effects, they all start from a fundamental thing, and then they kind of plus on that. And the visual effects one is a real interest for me professionally at this point in time. It's not something I've done a lot with over the years. And as a company, Outplay, we want to improve how we do visual effects within our games. But they generally start with kind of getting the first part of it right, the timing of it, and it performing nicely for the player at that time. When it doesn't feel right, it's generally because we don't have the timing of it right, you know, or and then we can start building upon it, adding the flair and the flourish and all the bits and bobs on top of that. But so I'd say in terms of that, yeah, just really drawing all the time. I think is drawing every day really is, and I know you're going to hear that from everyone and anyone that kind of says that, but really, I think it really makes a big difference.
Any other questions? I've got one. What one piece of advice would you give to yourself when you were 16, 17?
Stop being so arrogant. So I just assumed when I came into the industry that when I was getting into the industry, I'll get work fine, that'll be fine. I want to draw for a living, so that means I'll draw for a living, you know. No, it didn't happen. It took for me to step back and kind of go, you know, this is a huge thing that I don't know about, you know, and so that's a recommendation to my young self. It's not necessarily the case. I actually find so much of the time I get a lot of folk who are coming through who are very grounded and very good understanding about where they potentially can contribute at any one time. But I would say, yeah, I would actually say to myself, again, to your point as well, draw more, you know, and don't be so expectant, you know, because it's, that's what I'd say.
Any others? No? Good. Right, thank you for...
No problem. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. An hour and 20.